I'll never forget that moment. It burned itself into my memory like a scar that'll never fade. It was during a family barbecue at my brother Jake's house. You know, one of those forced smile afternoons where you pretend everything's perfect even though your gut keeps telling you something's off. I was in the kitchen grabbing a beer when I heard it. My Uncle Dave's voice, low and urgent, like he was trying to stop a car crash before it happened. Are you crazy? Ryan's home, and you're fooling around with your lover. He might catch you. I froze. I must have looked like an idiot just standing there, hand half in the fridge, breathing shallow and sharp. I leaned closer to the doorway, and then I heard her. Emily, my wife of 7 years, laughing like she didn't have a care in the damn world. I'm not worried about that loser. He's too soft to do anything. The words hit harder than any punch I'd ever taken. My legs were jelly. I should have barged in, made a scene. Instead, I stood there, humiliated, eavesdropping on my own downfall like some clueless bystander. I don't even know how I walked into the living room. My vision tunneled, all I saw was her. Emily, sitting way too close to this guy Brandon, some friend of the family, smirking like he owned the place. She didn't even blink when she saw me. She just smirked wider, like she knew she held every card. No, idiot, she spat, loud enough for everyone to hear. We're a real couple now. If you leave me, I'll take the kids and sue you for taxes. The room went dead silent. My mother gasped. My brother muttered something under his breath. And me? I stood there, skin burning, heart hammering so hard it felt like it would crack my ribs open. But I didn't say a word. I just turned around and left. I drove straight home, mind blank, hands numb on the steering wheel. The walls of our house, the house I'd built for her, for our kids, felt like they were caving in around me. I yanked open the filing cabinet in our bedroom and pulled out 2 things. Our burned, half-scorched marriage certificate, from the time our fire-bit prank went wrong on our first anniversary. I kept it as a joke. Now it felt like fate. The loan documents. The ones where, thanks to her great idea, she had signed off as the primary. I stuffed them into a bag, drove back to the party without calling anyone, without texting. When I walked back into that backyard, all eyes snapped to me. Emily didn't even look nervous. She just tossed her hair over her shoulder like she was bored. I dropped the charred marriage certificate on her lap. Then the loan documents. Her face paled when she recognized them. Good. That was the first time that day she showed any damn emotion. Without a word, I turned around and left again. And that, my friend, was the exact second I stopped loving Emily. I wish I could say that was the worst of it. I wish I could tell you that handing Emily those papers was my final act of defiance, my mic drop moment. But the truth? That was just the opening act. I stayed in a motel that night. Some crappy roadside place where the walls were thin and the neon sign outside buzzed all night. I sat on the bed, staring at the ceiling, playing her words over and over in my head. Loser. Too soft. Real couple now. My phone buzzed around midnight. I didn't want to look, but like an idiot, I did. It was a text from her. Emily, grow up. You embarrassed yourself today. When you're ready to act like a man, come home. No apology. No fear. Just more of that smug venom she wore like perfume. I threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall and shattered. Good. One less thing to keep me tied to her lies. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to just walk away like she thought. I needed to know everything. Needed to see the full rotten course she'd been hiding. So I drove back to the house while she was still at her yoga class, the one she only recently started taking 3 times a week. I used to think it was her way of coping with stress. Yeah, big joke. When I got there, the place smelled like her expensive candles, the ones I could barely afford but she needed for her anxiety. I dug through her drawers, her closet, her gym bag, and that's when I found it, her second phone, hidden inside one of her boots. It was cheap, old, probably bought just for him. Hands shaking, I turned it on. No password. She was arrogant like that, thought she was untouchable. Messages flooded the screen. Hundreds of them. Brandon, last night was insane. I still smell you on me. Emily, miss you already. Wish I didn't have to go home to that dummy. Brandon, soon. Very soon. Once he's out of the way. Emily, I can't wait to be free of him. He's so pathetic, he won't fight back. I dropped the phone like it was on fire. There it was. In black and white. Not just a fling. A plan. A sick, twisted plan to erase me from her life like I was some stain she couldn't scrub out. My heart didn't even hurt anymore. It was rage now. Pure and clean. A clarity I hadn't felt in years. She didn't just betray me. She didn't just lie to me. She laughed at me. She made plans to destroy me. And here's the thing about being called soft your whole life. One day, you break. And the person who called you soft finds out exactly how hard you can hit back. I pocketed the phone, left the house, sat in my truck for a long time, planning my next move. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to burn her world down, piece by piece. While she watched out, I waited until that evening. I wanted her comfortable, relaxed, thinking she still controlled everything. The old Ryan, the loser, would have stayed quiet, maybe begged for an explanation. But the man walking back into that house wasn't Ryan the pushover. Not anymore. When I opened the door, Emily was lounging on the couch in yoga pants, scrolling through her phone like she didn't have a care in the world. When she saw me, she didn't flinch. She just raised an eyebrow and smirked. Finally grew a pair and came home. Huh? She said, not even looking away from the screen. I didn't answer. I tossed her burner phone onto the coffee table between us. It landed with a loud thud. She stared at it for a second, and for the first time, her mask cracked. Just a flicker, a slight widening of the eyes, but I caught it. You've been busy, I said, my voice calm. Colder than ice. She crossed her arms, trying to recover her usual smugness. It's not what you think, she snapped. You're acting crazy, Ryan. Maybe if you actually paid attention to me once in a while, I wouldn't have needed it. I cut her off. Save it, Emily. I read every message, every disgusting plan, every insult. Her mouth opened, then shut. She shifted in her seat, wrapping her arms around herself like she was suddenly cold. It didn't mean anything, she mumbled. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Nothing. 7 years of marriage, nothing. Our kids, nothing. Our life, the sacrifices, the nights I worked overtime while she needed space, nothing. I laughed then. A harsh, bitter sound that didn't even sound like me. You know what's funny? I said. You thought I'd just take it. You thought you could break me and I'd just crawl away. She stood up now, trying to tower over me, shoving a finger in my chest. If you think you're getting out of this clean, you're dumber than you look, she spat. I'll take the kids, Ryan. I'll take the house. I'll bleed you dry, you piece of crap. There she was. The real Emily. Not the sweet girl I married. Not the woman who once cried tears of joy at our wedding. No, this was the schemer. The liar. The self-centered witch who thought love was something you could just throw away when it got boring. I leaned in, so close I could see the fake fear in her eyes. You want it all, Em? Fine. I pulled out another envelope from my jacket and tossed it on the table next to the phone. She opened it. It was the paperwork. Proof that she was responsible for the house loan. Proof that I had legally separated all assets 6 months ago after she started acting weird. Proof that the only one getting bled dry was her. Her hands shook as she flipped through it. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. I smiled, not a kind smile. You get to keep it all, babe, I said, stepping back toward the door. The house. The debt. The taxes. Enjoy it with your new boyfriend. Emily shrieked, a raw, ugly sound. She lunged at me, fist flying, but I stepped out easily, letting the door swing shut behind me. For the first time in a long time, I felt something real. Not rage. Not humiliation. Freedom. As I drove away, I saw her silhouette in the window, screaming and pounding on the glass. Good. Let her scream. She earned every second of it. The next morning hit me harder than I expected. At first, I thought I'd feel nothing but relief. You know, some sense of victory after all the crap she pulled. But that's not what happened. I woke up alone in a cheap motel room with stale air and yellowed curtains, and it felt like someone had ripped my chest open during the night and scooped out everything inside. Freedom didn't feel like a clean slate. It felt like standing in the wreckage of a house you built with your own hands, knowing it's gone and there's nothing left to save. I sat there on the edge of the bed for what felt like hours, staring at the wall, hearing her voice in my head over and over. Loser. Too soft. I'll bleed you dry. All those years, man. The late nights, the anniversaries, the talks about our future, the stupid inside jokes, just fake. A whole life I thought we were building, and she was using me like a stepping stone. Like I was just some sad excuse for a man she could wipe her shoes on. I didn't even realize I was crying until a tear dropped onto my hand. It made me furious. Not at her, not yet. At myself. Because deep down, I knew. I'd seen the signs. The sudden girls' nights that never made sense. The way she'd pick fights over nothing. The way her phone was always glued to her hand but upside down when I walked in the room. I chose to believe the lies because it was easier than facing the truth. I hated myself for that, for letting it happen, for trusting a woman who saw me as disposable. By noon, I knew I couldn't sit there rotting in my own misery. I had to move. I had to do something. I grabbed my keys, checked out of the motel, and drove aimlessly for a while, not even thinking about where I was going. Eventually, I ended up outside my buddy Eric's place. He was one of the few friends who never liked Emily, though he kept it to himself for years. I guess real friends know when to shut up and when to show up. Eric opened the door, took one look at me, and didn't say a damn word. He just stepped aside and let me in. We sat in his backyard, beers in hand, the sun beating down. I told him everything. The messages, the affair, her threats, the whole disgusting mess. When I finished, Eric just shook his head. You deserved better, man, he said. Way better. I wanted to believe that. But right then, all I could think was, did I? Was I the fool for thinking love meant something permanent? Eric must have seen it on my face because he leaned in and said something that stuck with me. You didn't lose anything, Ryan. You got rid of a cancer before it killed you. Maybe he was right. Maybe this wasn't the end of my life. Maybe it was the start of something real. Later that night, while crashing on Eric's couch, I made two decisions. First, I would never let Emily, or anyone like her, define my worth again. Second, I would make sure the next steps I took were mine, not hers. No revenge plots. No wasted energy. Just a clean, brutal cut. Tomorrow, I'd start over. Burn the bridges. Build new ones. On my terms. The next morning, I felt different. Not healed, no, not even close, but focused. There's something dangerous about a man who finally has nothing left to lose. That's where I was. I spent the early hours making calls, checking accounts, pulling every thread I could find to dismantle what was left of the life Emily thought she owned. Turns out, all that time I spent working, saving, building, it wasn't for her. It was for me. The house? Legally tied to the debt her name was on. The savings? Mostly transferred months ago when I first noticed her acting different to an account she couldn't touch. The car she drove around town, showing off like a queen, leased under my name, terminated the contract in one phone call. By noon, her entire fake kingdom started crumbling, and she didn't even know it yet. But the real move? That needed to be face-to-face. One last time. I showed up at the house that afternoon. It still smelled like her expensive candles, that fake lavender scent she thought made everything seem classy. When I walked into the kitchen, she was there, laughing on the phone with someone, barefoot, wearing one of my old t-shirts like it was some badge of irony. When she saw me, she didn't even look scared. She looked annoyed. What do you want, Ryan? She snapped, tossing her phone onto the counter. Here to beg for another chance? God, she was rotten to the core. I didn't answer. I just pulled a folder out of my jacket and slid it across the counter toward her. She eyed it like it was a snake, but curiosity got the better of her. She opened it, started reading. Her face went through a dozen emotions in less than 10 seconds. Confusion, shock, fear, rage. The folder contained the termination of her car lease, a bill for the house taxes coming due with her name on the debt, a notice of asset separation, custody papers, drawn up and ready to file. She looked up at me, red-faced and trembling. You can't do this to me, she hissed. You can't just walk away like this. I smiled, slow and cold. I'm not walking away, Emily. I'm watching you drown in the mess you made. She threw the folder across the kitchen, papers scattering everywhere. You're trash. You're a coward, she screamed. Maybe once upon a time, that would have gutted me. Not now. No, I said, grabbing my truck keys from the counter. I'm the guy who finally realized you're not worth saving. I turned to leave, and as I reached the door, she screamed after me, her voice shrill, desperate. If you leave, you'll never see the kids again. I paused, hand on the door. That used to be my greatest fear. Losing my children. Losing the right to be a father. But now? Now I had proof. Proof of her affair. Proof of her negligence. Proof of her character. And if there's one thing the courts don't look kindly on, it's a parent who chooses betrayal over family. I turned my head slightly and said, without looking back, see you in court. Then I walked out, sunlight slamming into me like a baptism. I didn't know exactly what came next. But for the first time in years, I knew one thing for sure. It would be on my terms. Not hers. If Emily thought I was bluffing, she found out real fast that I wasn't. The next few weeks were a war. Not the kind fought with fists or screaming matches. No, this was a cold, brutal, legal war. And I came prepared. First thing I did was meet with a lawyer, Mr. Coleman, a shark in a suit, the kind of guy who smiled like he already knew he was going to win. I handed him everything. The messages, the burner phone, proof of the affair, evidence that Emily had been negligent with the kids, nights when she left them with random sitters while she worked late. Coleman looked through the files, his grin widening. "She's cooked," he said, snapping the folder shut. "We're not just fighting for custody. We're taking it." Hearing that should have made me feel victorious. Instead, it just made me tired. I didn't want to destroy her. I wanted, I don't even know. Maybe just honesty. Maybe just the life we should have had. But you don't get that in real life. You get what you're willing to fight for. And I was done lying down. Emily, of course, didn't go down quietly. The first court meeting was a disaster. She showed up in a tight dress, fake tears in her eyes, playing the victim like it was her favorite role. "He abandoned his family," she sniffled to the judge. "He's emotionally unstable." I was scared for my life. I almost laughed in the middle of the courtroom. This woman, the same one who laughed about cheating on me, who bragged about bleeding me dry, was now playing the scared little lamb? But I stayed quiet. Let my lawyer do the talking. Let the evidence do the bleeding. When Coleman dropped the burner phone into evidence, Emily's face crumpled for a split second before she plastered the fake tears back on. The judge wasn't fooled. Old guy. Seen it all before. He didn't even hide his disgust when he read the messages out loud. Wish I didn't have to go home to that dummy. He's so pathetic, he won't fight back. Each word was a nail in her coffin. And each one made me realize this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about survival. The judge ordered a full custody review. Temporary custody to me. Supervised visits for her. Emily lost it right there in the courtroom. Started shouting at the judge. At her own lawyer. At me. Security had to escort her out. You'd think I'd feel satisfied watching her finally face consequences. But standing there, watching the woman I once swore to love dragged screaming from the room, all I felt was empty. This wasn't a victory parade. It was a funeral for the life I thought we had. Afterward, Eric met me at a diner. We sat in a booth, late-night coffee between us, the place nearly empty except for a couple of tired truckers. "You good?" he asked after a while. I shrugged. "I'm breathing," I said. "That's about it." He nodded like he understood exactly what that meant. Because here's the ugly truth nobody tells you about winning. Sometimes, it feels exactly like losing. A week after the court hearing, the fallout hit hard. Emily wasn't used to losing. She wasn't built for it. When her little empire started crumbling, she did what people like her always do. She got desperate. It started with the texts. Dozens of them. "Emily, you're ruining everything. We can fix this if you just stop being so selfish. Emily, think about the kids. Ryan, you're tearing our family apart. Emily, I'll tell the judge you hit me if you don't back off." That last one stopped me cold. Threats now. Real ones. For a moment, I almost cracked. Not because I believed she could actually win, not with the evidence stacked against her, but because I hated what this was doing to my kids. Lily and Noah deserved better than two parents tearing each other apart like animals. But then I remembered. This wasn't my fault. I didn't choose this war. I just refused to lose it. I saved every message. Sent them straight to my lawyer. A day later, Coleman filed a motion to restrict Emily's contact. Another win. Another nail. The next time I saw her, it wasn't in a courtroom. It was at Lily's school recital. She showed up late, dressed like she was still trying to impress someone. Tight dress, sky-high heels, fake smile plastered on. When Lily saw me in the audience, she waved so hard her whole little body shook. That smile, pure, innocent, made everything worth it. But when Emily walked up after the performance, she didn't even look at Lily. She looked straight at me. "This isn't over," she hissed under her breath, still smiling for the other parents. I leaned in, keeping my voice low and steady. "It already is, Emily. You just don't know it yet." That shook her. I saw it, the panic flashing in her eyes before she masked it with another fake laugh. Later that night, after I tucked Lily and Noah into bed, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The silence in the house was heavy, but it was clean, honest. No lies whispering from the corners. No pretending. Just me. And the pieces of my life I still had left. That's when the knock came. I opened the door to find Emily standing there, mascara smudged, hair a mess, clutching a bottle of cheap wine. "Please," she said, voice cracking. "Let's just go back to the way things were. I'll do better. I promise." For 1 second, just one, I almost remembered the girl I married. The one who cried during our vows. The one who used to hold my hand like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. But then she ruined it. "I'll be better," she said, "as long as you forget about Brandon." There it was. Still thinking it was about him. Still thinking it was something that could be erased if we just pretended hard enough. I stepped outside, shutting the door behind me so the kids wouldn't hear. "Emily," I said, voice flat, "you didn't just break my heart. You broke my respect. And once that's gone, there's nothing left." She started crying loud, messy sobs that sounded more like frustration than real regret. Maybe once upon a time, I would have held her, would have tried to fix her. But now? Now I saw her for what she really was. A fire that only knew how to destroy. And I was finally done letting it burn me alive. "Go home, Emily," I said. "This isn't your house anymore." She screamed at me then. Ugly words, threats, promises, but I didn't flinch. I closed the door gently in her face. And for the first time in a long, long time, I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little. It's strange how quiet life becomes after a storm. Weeks passed. The court finalized the custody agreement. Full custody to me, limited supervised visits for Emily. The house officially became mine. The debts, the chaos, the lies, all hers to carry now. At night, when the kids were asleep, I'd sit out on the back porch, staring up at the stars, wondering how the hell my life had ended up here. Alone. Starting over at 34. But the longer I sat with it, the clearer it became. I wasn't alone. Not really. I had Lily's laugh echoing down the hallway. Noah's sleepy hugs in the morning. I had peace. I had my soul intact. Emily tried to reach out a few more times. Pathetic, half-hearted texts. Photos of good times she thought would break me. False promises that we could rebuild. I didn't answer any of them. Because here's the truth. You don't rebuild a house when the foundation was rotten. You tear it down. You start fresh. One night, Eric dropped by with a six-pack. We sat on the porch, beers in hand, watching the kids chase fireflies. "You ever think about getting back out there?" he asked, nodding toward the future like it was some wide-open road. I thought about it. About trusting someone again. About opening up only to risk getting gutted like before. "Maybe," I said, "but not yet." I wasn't scared of being alone. Not anymore. I'd learned the hard way that being with the wrong person is lonelier than any empty house. The next day, I packed up the last of Emily's junk. Old photos, clothes, memories that felt like knives in my hands. I didn't burn them. I didn't smash them. I just boxed them up and left them on her front porch. No anger. No drama. Just closure. When she found the box, she tried calling. I watched her name flash on my phone. Watched it ring. Watched it stop. It was like standing on the edge of a cliff and choosing, really choosing, not to jump. In the end, this wasn't a story about betrayal. It wasn't even about Emily. It was about me. About learning that loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you. About realizing that forgiveness isn't about giving them another chance, it's about giving yourself permission to move on. If I could go back and tell the man standing in Jake's kitchen, frozen with a beer halfway to his mouth, overhearing the truth about his wife, I'd tell him this. You're stronger than you know. And sometimes, losing everything you thought you needed is the only way to find out who you really are. Emily's gone. Her laughter doesn't echo in these walls anymore. Her lies don't poison the air. What's left is quieter, smaller, but it's real, and it's mine. I tuck the kids into bed every night knowing they're growing up watching a man who chose dignity over destruction, who didn't let bitterness eat him alive, who didn't become the monster they accused him of being. Life isn't perfect. It's messy and painful and unfair. But sometimes, if you're lucky, after the worst storm rips through and leaves you standing knee-deep in wreckage, you find a seed buried under all the rubble, and you get to start again, this time with clean hands and an unbreakable heart.